Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Hi, Tracy. Good evening. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneur Show. Thank you so much for taking time out for being here with me today.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Tracy, my first question, what would you do now?
Oh my gosh. I do a lot of different things. I will tell you, just to kind of start out, I've learned a lot more about my human design and how I'm made up as a person. And it
Right.
feels like it's given me a lot more permission to be who I am. So I work full time for a financial services company, been there 27 years. The last probably 7 to 10 years, I've focused more on learning and development for the organization. And currently I do that from a technology perspective,
Right.
so helping to educate our engineers. And I also am an adjunct faculty member for a graduate program. And I love teaching. I love helping my students from that perspective, and it's all virtual. And then lastly, I'm an entrepreneur. So just in the last maybe 2 years, I launched my own business to really help people to enhance their interpersonal skills and their more from a professional development, career building perspective.
Wow. How many
Yes.
hours do you work in a day?
A lot, a lot. I've been more intentional just in the last year or so to be present. I even got a bracelet with it engraved on it, to make sure that I'm spending time with family and friends too, and that I'm not just work, work, work all the time. So
Right.
I've become much better at time management and being efficient in what I'm doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Tracy, you say you work for a company, you work for an organization, and then you are a faculty. Plus,
hmm
you also have your own entrepreneurial venture that's going on. First of all, how did what's the mental setup that, when you're working for another organization, it's considered taboo, okay, people are hesitant to kind of, start something on their own when they're working for somebody else and stuff like that.
Mm.
How did you manage to do that, or what's the kind of communication that you have with the organization that you're working? If you can just walk us through a little bit of all that,
Sure.
that'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I started my own business, I knew that I couldn't really do exactly what I wanted to do, like in my full time role and in the company I've been with for a really long time. And so I thought if I want to create that kind of role and do these things, then I can do that on the side. And it's almost like you hear about left brain, right brain. It's almost like my full time work fulfills me in one side of my brain, and then my business does and the other side, and I'm able to do that, and I have a lot more freedom in my
Right.
business. I make the rules around what I'm doing, how often I'm doing it, who my clients are, that type of thing. It has been interesting. I would say even in the last 6 to 9 months, a lot more people in my full-time job are recognizing me, and what I'm doing in my business. So they're starting to ask questions. I'm advertising on like social media, and they're seeing me on LinkedIn all the time and starting to get really curious. So it has been better. I think in the beginning I was a little uncomfortable of feeling like it was a conflict of interest. Um, but now it really blends a lot. Like everything I focus on has to do with learning,
Yeah.
whether it's your career or technology or whatever it is. So a lot of those skills are the same. So it just ends up being comfortable having those conversations across the board.
Great. You said your full-time job with an organization that you're doing it with, it involves you training people. But of course, the topic on which you train there probably is different from what you do with your business, right? But then,
Yep.
how is that? Do you think that experience of training or teaching in general has helped you with your business, even though the topics that you teach are different?
I would say yes, because the team that I manage in my full time job, we look at learning strategy and more from an individual perspective and what kind of self paced learning opportunities can we create for our engineers, architects, like anybody within our technology team. So, a lot of things, whether it's the strategy or the products that we end up creating and putting out there, It also gives me ideas and kind of fuels some of the things that I can do outside of work.
Right.
And it's, even though you may be using the same strategies, the same types of products, it's very much different because it's not from a technical aspect, and that more technical training, learning programming languages, like all of those types of things.
Right.
And I would say the thing that's interesting too is I don't have a technology background. My background is more from a learning perspective and a business perspective. And in my entrepreneurial journey, I have the opportunity to use that learning strategy for those soft skills and that career development, which is so, completely opposite from that technology aspect.
Right. It is opposite, but also, I think your full time job also gives you all that credibility that you need as an entrepreneur,
Yes.
right? Because
Yep.
you're doing something which you've been doing it for so many years. So you have a strong
Yep.
backing to prove to
Yep.
people or to show people that, this is exactly what I have been doing, plus I do right now also. Great, great.
Absolutely.
Uh, Tracy, I'm just going to go, I was just reading about you on your website, and then
Uh-huh.
you talk about some extreme stuff, like there's bankruptcy, and then
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of your journey has started from there, and it's quite a shift, it's quite a growth. Can you walk us through your journey, through all that, and especially your mindset through all that?
Sure, sure. So I do mention on my website that I had gone through bankruptcy. Thankfully, that was a long, long time ago. I learned so much through it. Not
Right.
only how to interact with people, but from finances and just getting myself organized, and things like that. And it gave me, well, I'll say not just with that, but as we go further along, I also mentioned on there breast cancer.
Yeah, yeah.
So in 2020, just a couple months before the pandemic was announced, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And what I was able to do, and it's interesting because even after I was done with my surgeries, I was going into more of a remission. I talked to a therapist and I said, I'm really worried that I haven't dealt with, all the emotions, all of the things, with being diagnosed and going through this. And she started to ask me a little bit more about what I had done. And I said, well, I recorded my journey and I have a whole YouTube playlist on as I went through, all of the things that I did. And she asked me why I did that. And I said, because there wasn't much out there about it. And the stuff I was finding, everybody's journey is different. So, and
Right.
I was able to watch two people on YouTube throughout my journey and kind of hear some of the things that could happen, or, what might be similar and what might not be. And she's like, you used, whether you consciously did it or not, she's like, that learning is so much a part of you. You did that to give back to others, and that was how you worked through the situation too. Like, that was my own therapeutic way to handle it. So I feel like anything that's been thrown at me in life, yes, it's been hard, and I've had to take a step back and, take care of myself and kind of regroup. But it's also helped me to learn so much more, to help other people to learn so much more. I actually, there's another story with my diagnosis. I was looking to launch my business in 2019. And I had even talked to a photographer in, I think it was mid 2019 or so. I talked to a photographer and I said, hey, I want to do some brand photography, like get some marketing stuff together. She gave me the contract and everything. And I just felt like, the timing's not right. And so I went back to her and I said, there's just something like this isn't right. And it was like maybe 3 or 4 weeks later that I got my diagnosis. And I put my business on hold. I'm like, I have to, you only have so much time in the day and everything. And so I put it on hold. I actually came back to her almost a year later after I went through all of my struggles and everything. And I said, I have more of a fire than I ever have before to be able to
Right.
help people and to run this business and to put it out there. And so that's, part of me launching my business and getting up and moving from there. So yeah, those were two big things that I mentioned on there,
Yeah.
going through. Yep.
Got it, Tracy.
Yeah.
Tracy, you when I asked you what you do, you said three things, right? One is your
Uh-huh.
corporate journey, which is about 27 years,
Yep.
and then you started working as an adjunct faculty. So I'm sure when you started off, you just started off with one job. But
Yes.
how did your second job start, or under what circumstances? Like,
Huh.
what led to you becoming an adjunct faculty and the circumstances surrounding it?
So I will tell you that when I was with my company, I had actually wanted to, and I tried to for a long time to get into our human resources department and to get into learning and development. And I wanted to be a trainer for the longest time.
Okay,
When I graduated high school, I wanted to be a high school teacher. And
right,
I started making too much money in the business world, and I was like, I can't be a high school teacher. Like that would, money wise, that I couldn't do that. So I thought I'll be a trainer, like a corporate trainer. And no matter how hard I tried, I want to say it was over 7 or 8 years, I interviewed for roles, different types of roles in HR, try to get my foot in the door, things like that. None of those ever worked out.
right,
And so I thought, okay, if I can't do this in my job, just kind of like my business too, if I can't do some of these things in my job, well, how can I find something outside that would help me to use those skills and to learn and to grow and help other people? And so that's when I thought about teaching. And so it actually took me over 2 years and I want to say 30 or 40 applications for adjunct jobs
wow,
to finally land a role. Yes, it was
right,
very, very hard.
right,
Um, and so I landed a role there, and that's been, I think it's been 7 or 8 years now that I've held an adjunct position in one form or fashion.
right, right, great. And this thing that you had to do had no bearing on your existing job, so you were completely transparent with your organization about doing this, and it's a thing
Yep.
in the
Yep.
US, is it? Okay,
Yes. Yep.
okay, great. And how many hours of this faculty thing that you do takes, for you per week?
So that's another interesting question. It was, I can't remember when. It was in the last year at some point. My husband and I were talking about the three different kind of roles that I hold, and he was saying, well, maybe you need to walk away from teaching so you can focus on your business more. Allocate
Right,
that time. And he's
right.
like, you talk about time management all the time. He said, why don't you do
Mhm.
a time audit on yourself and all the things you do? I'm like, man, he's throwing it back at me. So for just over 2 weeks, I did a time audit and I
Okay.
kept track of how many hours in a day that I worked on my full time job,
Hmm.
my teaching, and my entrepreneurship, my business. And what I found out is that I had things down to a science with my teaching that
Hmm.
I was working anywhere from 4 to 6 hours maybe a week. Like
Right,
with grading, I was creating videos and got really efficient with leveraging this so I could reuse them if I taught that class again, and sharing those with my students, checking in on our, messenger, things like that. But I had gotten so efficient on it, I ended up, I was kind of worried because I thought, maybe I do spend way too much time. And then we looked at it at the end, and surprisingly, it was like, what does it make sense to walk away from this? Because, I've got it, like I said, down to a science to keep it where it is. Yeah.
great. So 6 hours, and yeah, that should
Yeah.
great. And what about the your entrepreneurial venture? How much time do you spend there?
So I will tell you that one is like a roller coaster. It goes up and down.
Right.
When I was doing that time audit, I was spending almost 40 hours a week on my business
Wow. Okay.
and 40 to 45 hours a week working full time. So I was getting up in the morning, spending 2 hours, 2.5 hours before work. On the weekends, I was spending a lot of time and investing a lot into building up pieces of my business. The
Right.
nice thing is that I have the ability to either, put the pedal to the metal and do a whole lot with my business, or I can kind of take my foot off a little bit and, slow down depending on what's going on. So that's been really nice that I've been able to do that.
Great. And your entrepreneurial venture, are you just one person doing it, or do you have a team, Tracy?
I am one person. Yep. It's even harder.
Okay. Yeah, because there are like so many things to being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, one of the
Yes.
things that's very common for somebody who's an entrepreneur in a way that they teach is, yeah, they might be good in teaching, but that doesn't guarantee that they're good in all the other aspects of an entrepreneurship, right? Like
Yep.
one of the first major things is sales. So talking about which, um, how and what did you have to do to get your first client? Uh,
Oh my gosh. Sales is not my specialty at all.
okay,
Um, so one thing I did learn early on when I started my
right.
business, and I saw a lot of
Mm-hmm.
examples of others doing this, is getting coaches. So getting business or entrepreneur coaches to help support
Right.
me, and even trying to figure out if I didn't have the time or if I could use my time more wisely, like where could I try to outsource some of those things that I'm not so good at.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried a little bit of that. Like I hired a virtual assistant to help me with some things. We agreed it was a trial. Didn't end up working out, so no hard feelings. Um, but I hired these coaches and they were able to help me. And I would say confidence was a big one coming out of the gate and making me realize like how credible and how knowledgeable I was and what I was offering to people.
Mm.
And a lot of times entrepreneurs say, "Who am I?" And so a lot of these coaches were trying to get me to reframe my mindset of why not you? Like you have so much to offer.
Right.
And
Right.
that was so helpful. So definitely hiring, and I still to this day, I've stayed with my social media strategy coach. And I think it's paying off because so many people recognize me on LinkedIn, especially from work or elsewhere, and being able to, put content out there consistently. Um, so sales was very, very hard for me, and figuring out what types of approaches work best for me, because I didn't want to come across as that like sleazy car salesman kind of approach,
Yeah.
but being open about it. And then I also had to be comfortable if I got in and talked to somebody and offered them something that I did and they said no for one reason or another.
Right.
So that's been I've grown a lot just from that. Because I met a client, months ago where I felt like it would have been a perfect fit for the two of us
Mm-hmm.
to work together.
Mm.
And then for some reason or another, she wasn't able to.
Right.
Um, and I kind of, you have to bless and release that. And, the right person will come along. And I've had plenty of other clients that I've worked with and they have, valued and there's been impact in what they've gotten, from what I've provided. So it's definitely, I would say it's not only a roller coaster of working on my business, but also like the emotional, like,
Yeah.
working in my business, that kind of thing too.
Great. So, from the day you started off, your entrepreneurial venture, how long did you have to work around to land your first client, Tracy?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I want to say it, it was a few months, maybe.
Right.
One of the first things that I had done when I started out was to offer a workshop for business owners who wanted to create their own course.
Mm-hmm.
And so those business owners could come in for an 8-week program, and we met once a week. I think I charged like $400 or something like that, which to me was like, that's a lot of money, to put out there for a program. And so I ended up having two people that participated in that. And one had to drop like halfway through,
Right.
but she referred somebody else and they came into the program. And I would say one thing that I learned, and probably later than I should have, was that even if you have one person buy your product or service, you should treat them just as you would treat like if you had a full like class or group. Um,
Right.
and so even more recently, I've had several failed launches on trying to get products or services out there, and pushed one out. I had someone buy a 3-month membership, and I remembered that. And so everything that I did during that 3 months, I ended up closing it down afterwards, kind of pausing it and saying, I don't know if we're going to continue this from here. But everything I did during that 3 months, I, I gave her everything and more, probably even more than I would
Right.
have given, a whole group of people. And she appreciated it, and she valued that. I'm like, you are very lucky, because if I would have done one-on-one, like, the price is usually, significantly higher. So just keeping that in mind and working with people too.
Yeah. Tracy, here's a devil's advocate kind of question for you, right?
Uh-huh.
So you said, you started a course, where it's an 8-week program where you
Hmm.
were helping business owners create their course. So usually
Yep.
I've come across people who do this kind of thing, where they did that for themselves, being a business owner. But here's who just started off your entrepreneurial venture, but directly started a program. So what was the experience that you underwent that you thought you could draw from to do this particular thing to help other business owners?
Oh, I would say the fact that I was creating my own courses, and I had started to create my own courses.
Right.
And even from, like, my full-time job and creating courses and going through that, process, I knew I had that ability to do it. And I want to say I might have even gone through an exercise with a coach that was talking about how sometimes as entrepreneurs, we put so much pressure on ourselves to come up with this new and great product or service when
Right.
we're doing things that are already, like, easily sold products and services. And so when I took a step back and looked at it, it's like, wait a minute. I've been creating these courses. I know the steps involved. I know some tips and best practices. I also had to realize I'm not the expert, but I'm a couple steps ahead of the people who, will come in and pay for my services. So I would say a lot of that is kind of thinking things that I take for granted that I would say are easy in my mind are not easy for other people.
Right.
And being able to start realize what some of those are and put them
Mm.
into whether they're free or paid offerings for clients.
Right. Great. And you said you are not doing that anymore, right? You paused that
No.
particular program.
Yeah, so the interesting thing was probably for the first year and a half that I started my business, I
Right.
did a lot of throwing products and services against the wall to see what would work and what would stick.
Right.
And then kind of moving on, trying one thing, pulling back, doing something different. But one thing I learned from that too is I wasn't staying consistent in what I was offering. So people were thinking I was jumping around all the time or weren't sure what I was doing. So even in the past, probably 5 or 6 months, I'm really trying to lean back and be consistent and focus and let people know. So still to this day, I'll have people say, "Oh, do you write resumes? Like, do you help people with that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, I thought, you think everybody knows." And even like my social media coach, she's like, "Just because you post it once doesn't mean everybody in the world has read it 5 times.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be consistent even in your marketing." So I'm trying, although it's hard because I'm like always wanting to try or pilot or, use innovative, try different things. But definitely trying to be more consistent in what I'm offering, only a few, maybe a couple offerings at a time, putting out there, and trying to get the word out so people know what that is.
Got it, Tracy.
Yeah.
Tracy, this is just to kind of uh, help out and give some kind of a perspective to people who are just starting off, their entrepreneurial journey or ventures. It's been about
Hmm.
what, 2 to 3 years since you started off yours,
Yep. Yep. About
right?
two, a little
And
over 2 years. Yeah.
okay, could you walk us through the entire evolution of it? Like you said, you started off offering something and then you changed it, and then so what are the things that you had to do undo, and what are the moments that helped you kind of get a clarity, or what, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah. I don't know that I remember all of it because it feels like a
Anything,
lot
yeah.
was
It's
packed in all
it's
of
more to
that.
do with the mindset. It's, yeah, you don't
Yes.
have to like get into the specifics of what changed and whatnot, but
Yeah.
more about how and why rather than what exactly it was.
Yeah. So I know in the beginning, I had the mindset of when I put something out there, like everybody is seeing it and everybody's going to freak out. And I was almost afraid when I started, I had the mindset of a fear of success. And like, what am I going to do if this takes off? Like, because I will have to rebalance my teaching, my full time job. Like, what if that happens? Well, that doesn't happen overnight. Sorry to break it to entrepreneurs that might be listening, but it definitely takes a long time to get things up and
Right.
running. Um, One thing that I learned early on was having a supportive coach or coaches, and a community of people who are going through these similar things that I was as an entrepreneur. And the nice thing is, in the groups of entrepreneurs, and there were a lot of female entrepreneur groups that I became a part of, I was also searching out for people who were working full time. So that were very similar to my story, so I could learn how they balanced and start to, figure out what I needed to do,
Right.
and also thinking about businesses that were somewhat similar to mine and what kinds of things that they were doing as well. Um, I'm trying to think over time. I have, there's probably more times than I can count on my hand that I wanted to just quit doing my business.
Right.
Didn't think it was worth it. Like, is it really like, I don't think the first 5 years of being an entrepreneur are about the money. It's about the passion and getting out there and doing what you love. And I'm trying to figure out, is there an opportunity to turn that passion into something that, I can grow and put out there and pay the bills with, um, and be able to do that. I'm trying to think of anything else throughout the journey. It was definitely hard to try to balance everything. And I would say, with working full time and teaching, and especially the full time job, paying the house payment, paying all those big bills, um, I had to lower the priority of things for my business
Right.
if
Right.
something like there was an emergency at work or something needed done. I had to really look at the priorities of things. And so in a way that could have held me back. But I don't know that I had another option either. Yeah.
Right. Tracy, you know, just like you thought multiple times, you had a feeling that, you just wanted to quit, right? Have there
Hmm.
been moments where you thought, you know what, probably my entrepreneurial venture is going to take off if I put more energy and focus? And were there moments you thought, you know what, is this the time I quit my full-time job and probably, try here, put all my bets here and then see if it takes off? Have there been moments like that?
I have actually thought of that.
Right.
Um, I don't have a safety net.
Right.
My spouse is on disability. Like thinking about some of those things, I don't have the risk appetite to be able
Right.
to do that.
Right.
I would say to myself, and even worked with one of my coaches of, okay, if my business gets to this point, like
Mm.
this amount of revenue, and like I hit these milestones, then I can entertain the thought of if I wanted to walk away from my job.
Right.
Haven't gotten there when I've looked at those milestones. So kind of to me, it's like until I can, lay out and what are these milestones. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I talked to a coach at one point, I was like, you know what, in X number of years, I'm going to be able to like pay off my student loans or walk away from my full-time job. And then I would miss the first month or the first quarter of goals that I had.
Right.
And I would beat myself up over it. And then I talked to somebody else, even this year, another coach, and I said, I don't know that I'll ever be able to make it there. I keep missing the goalpost. And she's like, does there have to be a time frame? Do you have to say that it has to happen in 2 years? And she goes, what's the purpose of that? And I was like, I guess I don't have to. give a time frame. It's more of my comfort level. And even just that conversation, it's almost like my shoulders relax.
Yeah.
I got more comfortable with the idea and just more comfortable with my business and not so stressed out by it. Because if you stay consistently stressed out by your business, it's not going to make you happy. It's not going to be something that you want to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Great. You know what? Thank you so much for sharing this, because sometimes, you know, entrepreneurship is not about, quitting stuff that you do,
Hmm.
because it eventually boils down to your basic needs, the way you've prioritized, despite, knowing that these are your passions and stuff like that. You know for a fact that, okay, you know what, this is my basic stuff. Only if this goes right, this exists. So
Yep.
without that, even the little thing that you're doing, which may not be successful, even that's not going to exist. So
Hmm.
that's exactly the perspective I thought, I'll get from you. And thank you for sharing this exact thing, because I'm
Yeah.
sure there are a lot of people who have conversed with, have juggled two things at the same time, for them
Hmm.
to finally be able to kind of, do one thing full time.
Yep.
Tracy, another very important thing that you've spoken about is having someone to, talk to you about, business coaches and mindset coaches and so on and so forth, right? Especially
Yep.
when you started off your entrepreneurial venture, when I spoke to you about the first sale, you spoke about coaches that you had. Now,
Yep.
uh, how important is it to, because there are a lot of coaches out there, right? Like how important,
Yes.
or what are the best practices that one needs to kind of follow while selecting a coach? Sometimes there's a lot of money that you're paying. More
Oh,
than the
yes.
money, there's a lot of time that you spend, and there's a lot of mindset you're consuming from the coaches, right?
Yep.
So what would you say about how do people in your position go about choosing these coaches or a coach?
Yeah. That's interesting that you asked that too, because I was just talking with one of our, at my full-time job, one of our interns, and she's in college and she was thinking like maybe I'll become an entrepreneur. And she was asking me questions. She goes, I didn't even know there were coaches, like just the whole concept of that. And I was like, oh yeah, at one point I had a social media, I had a sales coach, I had a systems related coach. And I would say definitely it can be very expensive. Um, and what I had mentioned to her was that when you go to look at getting a potential coach, you really have to prioritize what you need that support with the most in your business. So if it's setting up your systems, or if the sales is the most important thing, or the visibility and getting out there, figuring out who that coach or what opportunities there are out there. All of the coaches that I have worked with have offered free challenges, free resources, like all of that kind of thing. And
Right,
then they've had up level of, you get into different programs or different groups, and you might pay, different amounts based on what that is. And what I did is for most of them, maybe not early on, but, as I got further into my business, I made sure I paid attention to the coaches that were out there in the areas that I felt like I needed, and I watched them. And maybe I was that silent lurker, that stalker on social media, but I watched them and I listened to them. And then I started to slowly participate in the challenges that they had,
right,
or if they did a webinar and those kind of things, to see if I vibed with them.
right.
There was one coach that I listened to for about a year, a little over a year. And at first I was thrown off. She dropped the F bomb. Like, her language was very different from mine and what I'm comfortable with. But after a year of listening to her, and I continued to be like mesmerized, just like when she would come on live or something and listen to her, I enrolled in her biggest program.
Wow.
And I got so much out of it. I made so many connections.
Mm.
She helped to build my confidence. Um, and so I stayed in her program for a little over a year. And then I realized I had different needs for different parts of my business, and, decided to go to another coach. But definitely being able to see that you will vibe with that coach and taking advantage of what free items that they offer. Most coaches will, even if you wanted to do like a 20-minute, 15-minute, like, pick my brain, Q&A, something like that. They would be open to that, or they might have a free group or something like that. But definitely checking them out before you start to invest, and knowing that most of these business coaches have, from free to high ticket offerings, and that you could, leverage any of those services that they have.
Great, great. Thank you. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I saw, as your offer is branding for mid-level professionals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I want to talk about this is when you're a professional, uh, be it working for someone, or be it as a business or a service that you do, your work already, there's so much that could speak for you. But today, with social media and stuff like that, there's something called as branding.
Mm-hmm.
uh, how much of a difference can branding do, or how essential it is today, Tracy, in your view? Is it
I
for
would say
mid-level
it's
professionals to brand?
Yeah, for mid-level professionals, I would say it's critical. Um, One of the first things that I do, like even as a mid-level professional, if I go to a conference or I meet a vendor, anything like that for my full-time job, I'm looking at LinkedIn and trying to connect with them right away. And
Right,
so, like, even if you don't have your picture, like a nice picture on LinkedIn on your profile, or you don't have some of the stuff filled out on there, like that's
right,
all part of your branding. And for
right,
people to build those relationships and network with you, and not just creating your profile and then walking away, but
uh,
engaging with other people.
right,
Because most of the times, like if there's a position that comes open, whether it's in your own company or another company, and you go to post for it, you don't want to be finding out about the other person, their company, like the job, at the moment that the job is out there.
right,
You should have that insight and build those relationships before a job even appears. And so your branding really helps you to do that and to stand out and to help people think of you when they're thinking about the topic, or, whatever area of focus that you have, that
right.
you come to mind, and for them to be able to find you.
Got it. So sometimes branding can be as simple as making connections on LinkedIn, and
Yep.
especially when you're meeting someone in person, just translate
Hmm.
that whole thing into a digital experience as well immediately.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
for people who work from home, uh, they don't even have an opportunity to meet people that they connect with on LinkedIn. So if you are in real life
Yep.
connecting with somebody, it's a no-brainer that you immediately go and probably connect with them on LinkedIn, because that
Right.
connection becomes so much more meaningful when you then have to kind of interact without that physical connection. Great.
Yeah, and I would say too, in the virtual space, I believe people got more comfortable with this through the pandemic, but
Pandemic, yeah.
not being afraid to get on camera. And like I work from home fully, I'm fully remote for my full-time job,
Right.
and there was a period of time where it was sweatpants and a t-shirt, and like I'd throw my hair up in a messy bun and like sit and do my work. But I realized, and one of my managers had taught me this, is she would get up every day in the pandemic, do her hair, do her makeup, like dress very nicely, and sit in front of the computer and work. And she was like, it makes a difference of how
Yeah,
you
yeah.
feel and how you act. And so I started to do that. I can't say now I do it every day, but I do definitely notice that there's a difference. And I'm not as afraid to turn on my camera when I am in a meeting and be able to talk to people, because there's so much of a difference. And there's a lot of research around this too, of the face to face
Yeah.
versus just, the audio piece of it, and what a difference that makes. So that goes with your branding big time too.
Got it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The least you can do when you cannot meet somebody in person is, if you're doing it virtual, please have your videos on, right? It makes
Yep.
so much of a
Yep.
difference. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Yep.
Tracy, while I was, looking at your website, I saw that you've got a couple of uh, courses that you have on for people,
Mm-hmm.
right? One is about resume, one is about the LinkedIn, but it's not about what the course is, right? My question's coming
Mm-hmm.
from a point of view that could you now there are two things in your entrepreneurial venture. One is where you sell your time
Mm-hmm.
or offer your time, which is one way, and
Yep.
then you've got your product in the form of a course,
Yep.
right? So what happened first? Did the coaching where you kind of offered your time first happen and then followed by course, or was it vice versa?
Early on when I mentioned the 8-week program, so that was my time.
Right,
But I quickly switched over to more of the products, so the courses, checklists, things like that. And one of the reasons for that was just time. And
right,
there was a
right,
point, it was during the 2020 that I also went from teaching undergraduate to teaching in a graduate program. So that took more time. I was in a new school, I was in a new program, and so getting used to that. So for me to balance, I always talk about spinning the plates and putting those up. And for me to kind of rebalance those plates, I was able to turn to more of these passive products and what can I
right.
put out there. Um, Now I'm seeing the value of more one-on-one, more connection. I have a lot of people
Mm,
come to me asking for, um, I thought people would want a course on resume writing, which I have out there.
mm,
They want you to do it for them. Or they want to talk to you about how do they switch to a different type of role. They're not happy in their role. How do they figure out what they want to do, that kind of thing. So I am starting to, I haven't formally rolled it out. It's on my website now, but I'm looking at a career counseling chat
right,
so that they can pay a monthly fee and I'm available. And, they could put a couple of chats in there, text chats, and, I help them, figure out their journey and if they want to figure out their strategy, like that kind of thing. But I've definitely noticed that people want that one on one connection and they don't want to be in
right.
a group talking about their career and where
Mm,
they want to
mm,
go and what they want to do, which I totally get that.
great.
Yeah,
So the more personal something is, they prefer a one-on-one sort of setting.
that's what I'm seeing for sure. Yep. Yeah.
Great, great. Because yeah, talking about your career and your job prospects and stuff like that in a group can be a little overwhelming for some people. Great.
Hmm.
So you're saying that even though you created your courses, you're saying that for the kind of courses that you have, people prefer, as you said, they want you to build out their resume or at least get on a
Yep.
call and then kind of do it together, sort of thing. Got it.
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
fine. But I still have a few questions about your courses,
Hmm.
right? So, could you, for people who are just thinking of creating a course and who've been thinking about it for a long time and haven't done a thing,
Uh-huh.
um, just building something can build so much momentum for them, right? So,
Yes.
what are your courses? I mean, how do you build your course? Is it like a screen sharing and a voiceover sort of a thing, or do you come in front of the camera? And so, how did that? And what are the factors you took into consideration before choosing the format of your courses?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'm actually thinking about changing not so much the format, but the placement of my courses.
Okay,
So what I had done initially and what I have out there now is on my own platform. People can go into my portal and I have where I did. I don't think you see my face on them, but I had done a screen share.
okay,
So one is a PowerPoint, the other one is more of a demo kind of how to and walked through and then figured out where the natural breaks are so that
right,
you have different modules or different sections and things like that. I also coupled those with maybe there was a 1-page checklist or maybe there was a template or examples or a workbook, things like that. So I always had something packaged with it. One thing that I realize is I was able to sell some of those. What's been interesting is with one of my courses is I sold more of I have a leveraging LinkedIn course. I sold more of that course when I did a 1-week masterclass. And what I
right,
did with that masterclass is I had a group and that group every day I would come on live and I would it was almost like the recording that I had put in, but it was the fact that people were there live with me. They could ask questions if they wanted, or they could come back later in the group and ask questions. So that interaction was still a big thing
Right.
for that. But one thing that I've been thinking about with the courses that I have out there is I created them in my own platform and I pushed them out. But the challenge with that is that you also have to be that primary marketing source to
Right.
drive people to that. And that's been a little bit more challenging for me. I'm not the salesperson. Time is not on my side to try to do these things.
Yeah.
So I'm actually exploring things like Udemy and other platforms where I could tweak and make changes, and they're due for small updates anyway, that I can tweak and make some changes and put them on the Udemy platform or another platform. I'm kind of exploring what options are out there, and they also help me do some of the marketing too. And I
Right.
also think that when I would go to create visibility or like put something on social media, if somebody sees that my course is on Udemy, there could be a little bit more credibility to that versus I don't know what this course is or, how it's
Hmm.
organized. People expect a certain thing when they go into platforms like Udemy or something else to be on there. So definitely a iteration as I've gone and realization over time. But I think you're never going to put out a product or a service and it's going to stay the same for years on end. Like, I don't know that that would be, in some instances, maybe that's a good thing and that's profitable, but I think it's good for me as an entrepreneur and my audience to get the best that I have to offer and for me to make those tweaks and changes over time.
Great. So let's take your leveraging LinkedIn course, right? So you're saying that you
Hmm.
created that course first, and
Hmm.
then while figuring out how to sell is when you kind of started doing this masterclass,
Yes.
where you sort of went live. But the thing
Hmm.
is, you gave away pretty much all of the content as part of that course in your live
Hmm.
interactions,
Yes.
while still ending up selling the same thing as a course as well.
Yep.
So that
The
wasn't a
masterclass
problem
was
for
a
the group.
paid offering.
Oh,
The
right. Okay.
masterclass wasn't free. Yeah. Yep. I did
Okay.
a little bit of a discount, but I did make money
Okay.
off of it. Yeah.
And the course was just like a part of the masterclass, like a giveaway. You didn't
I
sell it
was
separately.
actually recreating the course as the
Okay.
masterclass. I I wasn't selling it separate. People still have access to the
Got it.
group that they
Got
were
it. Got
in,
it.
so they
Got
could
it.
still access
Okay.
all the content and materials. Yeah.
Okay. You meant to say
Yeah.
that the same thing, that the same content, same information and knowledge that you put together as your course
Yep.
sold better as a masterclass. That's what you're trying to say. The
Yes.
format.
And people
Okay.
wanted it that real time
Real time. Right.
versus, hey, I bought this course, I have to go into this portal, and the
Right.
likelihood that you'll never touch it again. The likelihood is slim. Like, I even got a free course from another coach. It's still sitting in my inbox. I haven't clicked on the link and it's been a few weeks. But it's
Right.
like if there was a certain time that I had to be there and listen, and if I was interested in enough, I probably would have gone and listened to it, but it's just sitting in my inbox.
Got it, Tracy.
Yeah. I
Can
think
you
we all do it.
talk about? Sorry.
I think we all do that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
some degree or another, right? We buy stuff
Yeah.
and never touch it.
Yeah. See, when there is another human being in front of you who's doing something rather than just giving away a course that you do it on your own, I think
Yep.
people are going to choose the first one, right? I mean,
Right.
nothing better than a live interaction with somebody
Yes.
real. So I think that's a takeaway. But how did you manage to put together this masterclass from a marketing point of view? And how did you solve it from a logistical point of view?
So with the masterclass for marketing, I made sure that I was leveraging my email list.
Hmm.
I would say a big portion of the people who participated in the masterclass were on my email list already.
Right.
And it wasn't just emailing them once. It was, sending several reminders. One thing my social media coach says is to like when you're trying to sell an offer, like you should be so sick of hearing yourself talk about it. And that's when you know that you've probably maybe even still not done enough. And every time there's a new person picking it up or listening. And I felt like that too with my email marketing. Like when I
Right.
was marketing that masterclass, it would be like, the third time I sent it out a few weeks later, getting ready for the launch, somebody would email me back and be like, oh, well, tell me about this, or how do I do this?
Right.
Um, I want to say I did quite a few more different things on video. So when I did social media, not just doing static posts, but putting up some reels or putting up video just talking about the course, the benefits that it could have. The couple people that had taken the static course itself, what they got out of it, like those kinds of things were really, really helpful. So I'm guessing, and now that I'm thinking about it, I did a lot more marketing for the masterclass. And maybe that was the teacher trainer in me that was more excited to be able to get in front and work with a group of people. And that came
Right.
out in my marketing too.
Great.
Yeah.
And uh, you said, now when you talk about email lists, right, there are so many
Hmm.
things now, especially
Yep.
for the people who are listening. Uh, Now, email lists, where do they come from? They come from your social media presence. Now, where does social media presence come from? It starts from zero somewhere, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, can you so what comes first? So, especially given that, you had a social media coach,
Uh-huh.
which, is probably a good thing that you did for yourself. So, when you were
Yep.
zero in social media, what was your
Hmm.
journey like from zero to what you are now? Where yeah,
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, your social media comes first, and then you start to build up your email list because that's where a lot of people are going to come from. One thing I learned too to help me with my email list was to have a freebie so that I could
right.
even advertise to people to say, hey, and right now I have the mid-level professionals guide to, I can't remember the name of it, like to slay in the workplace or something like that. And it's chock full of information. Like
Mm,
every probably 6 months to a year, if not more often, I'll create a different freebie. So it doesn't be, it's not stale put out there. So I'll advertise, every once in a while, maybe once a week, I'll say, have a static post or do a video about, hey, I have this, this is a part of it, this is what's in it. If you want a copy, go to my website. All you have to do is put your email address in and you'll get that. I think one of the hardest things with an email address, just from my perspective as an entrepreneur, is trying to send out regular emails.
right.
There's a lot of friends of mine that are entrepreneurs that have built up their email list. I even have a friend that I think she had over like 1,500 or 2,000 people on her email list. I was like, that's amazing. And she's like, I haven't emailed them in like 6 months. I'm like, oh, like you have to do something with it once you have it. And for me, that got to be really difficult. And I still struggle with it a little bit. One of the things I heard somebody mentioned in an entrepreneur circle was batching. And I did try it for a couple months. And the whole concept of batching, I sat down maybe on one Saturday and I wrote out, and they don't have to be novels, they don't have to be long. It could be a short, almost like copying a post that you have. But I created and I scheduled an email for every Monday of the month. And so I
Right.
didn't even have to think about it until the
Yeah.
next month. Um, there's other things, and like with my posts, I schedule a lot of things. I have them reoccurring, but I also make it so it's not like everything is scheduled, and that as I'm living my life, as things come up, like I'm getting on social media and I'm, you know, creating a post, putting things out there. A lot of people were asking me, like, how are you on social media all the time? I was a little bit worried too for anybody who's listening, who's an entrepreneur or wants to be an entrepreneur and working a full time job. One thing I was worried about was I will schedule posts during the workday. And I'm like, oh, people are going to be like, why aren't you working? Why are you doing
Right.
this?
Right.
So a lot of people were like, you're on social media all the time. And I was like, it's time management. Like, I'm very, very efficient. And I was like, a majority of my posts are scheduled and you'll see those out there. But most of the time, the platforms that we post on, there's a lag in the time that people see them. They might not see them until later on in the evening, a couple
Hmm.
days later, like things
Right.
like that.
Right.
So I think I was more worried about that than I really had to be. But making sure I had that presence, and that's helped me to grow. But also knowing that your email list alone is not your only marketing tool.
Right.
There are still people that are on social media that talk to me about my posts, but have never liked or commented, which I gave them permission. I
Mm,
said, you're allowed to. Um, and that's fine if they don't want to. But they're only going to see something because of something I post. And maybe they're not
right.
comfortable putting an email. Maybe they don't check their email. So you definitely have to have like a multifaceted strategy of how you're, bringing in your clients or potential clients.
Got it, Tracy. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Yeah.
that. So, Tracy, what we'll do now is there are a lot of questions for me, but at least about I can think of 5 to 6 questions. But
Okay.
these we can we do this in in a way where we can just use it as reels directly, or my
Sure.
distribution team can just make carousels out of this, like
Yeah,
something
definitely.
that's like a listicle, or something
Yep.
that involves numbers, some
Yep.
things that are definitive, which will kind of draw people to the
Yep.
post, which are like actionable. Great. So we can
Okay.
probably get started with the 3 questions that I emailed you.
Okay.
um
Yes.
you can just these can be very concise and crisp,
Okay.
within say 30 to 60 seconds.
Okay.
And then from our conversation, I've got a bunch of more questions that we can go one by one. So
Okay.
every time you're ready to answer a question, just
Mhm.
let me know. I just have to make one click here. I just have to mark the clip so that it becomes easier for my
Okay.
editor to kind of identify the points.
Okay.
So here the first one is, can you walk us through 3 pivotal moments where challenges like bankruptcy, corporate climbs, and health battles fuel your journey to success? Is that a question that you're okay to take and answer? Do you want some time to think about it, or is that
Uh,
too heavy a question to kind of
I can
make
think of
it?
2 major things for me.
Sure, it doesn't have to be three.
Is that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay? Okay.
Totally. I can rephrase the
S-
question.
So 2 challenges that I had along my journey that challenged me, but that made me realize some things are I stepped out of management at one point in my career and I battled breast cancer. And both of those fueled my fire to drive my business and to be successful.
Great.
Is
Thank
that
you.
too long?
No, no, that's cool. That's cool.
Okay.
We can
Okay.
do these. Okay, Tracy, it's very interesting that you spoke about stepping out of management thing, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a very interesting topic. So,
I should put that on my website too.
yeah, can you now, I'm just having a ad hoc thought for
Yeah.
cartridges here. Can you like share any number, like, whatever number you get, just say, okay, here are 3 reasons why I decided to step out of management.
Oh, okay. So, 2 reasons I decided to step out of management over a decade ago was 1, my mental health was way more important than any type of job role. And 2, it wasn't the direction I wanted to go in my career. So I had to take a step back and reconsider where I wanted to go.
Great, thank you for that. Um, Yeah. Also, when I was, going through your write up on your website, that's how I,
Mhm.
came up with this question about, maintaining a curious mindset and keep learning, right?
Mhm.
So now, people may not understand, okay, what is a curious mindset or how to maintain one. So if you can, give a list of actionable steps on, doing that and stuff, that'll be fine. And again, you can think of how many ever that comes to your mind, and you can start off by saying that, 3 things that you can do to be curious and stuff like that.
Okay. Hold on just a second.
Sure, take your time.
So here are 4 steps that you can take to have a more curious mindset. So number 1, ask questions. Number 2, be open to learning. Number 3, build relationships with others. And number 4, don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone.
Great. And yeah, the third question is about any number of tips that
Mhm.
mid-level professionals can use to amplify their brand and skyrocket their interpersonal skills.
Okay. So here are 4 tips that mid-level professionals can use to amplify their brand and skyrocket their careers. Number 1, get comfortable getting uncomfortable. Number 2, network, network, network. And number 3, update your LinkedIn. Don't forget the profile picture. And number 4, teach others.
Awesome. Okay. Tracy, some of the questions that I have, right? Let's do
hmm
some numbers. Like, for example, you're on what social media is the most important for you right now? Like, is it Instagram or is it LinkedIn, or what is it, where you
It
get
would
the
be
most
LinkedIn.
clients from? LinkedIn.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, LinkedIn
So
and Facebook for me are both. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're
Okay, so
okay.
LinkedIn, right? So
Mhm.
let's say from the time you had your social media coach, and you
Mhm.
had the social media coach for LinkedIn.
Mhm. My
Great.
social media coach, like, she did some on LinkedIn.
Okay.
It was really all platforms. Yep.
All platforms. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say if you can, remember the approximate numbers. Let's say at the point of you getting your social media coach, let's say you were a zero, right? Zero
Mhm.
followers or whatever. At this
Yep.
point, you'd be certain number, right? If you can
Yep.
say, uh, these are the 3 things that I did to grow my social media from zero to so much.
Okay.
Because what we found is instead of asking people to do it, just sharing what you did to grow yours,
Yep.
it's so much more influencing. And
Yeah.
that's when people are gonna come, hey, I saw a reel, where you said this, can you help me do that? So we're that's where we're coming from.
Right. So I grew my LinkedIn business followers by over 900% in a 2-year period. And these are 3 things I did to do that. I got visible. I got on video and did live streams more. And then I was also very active and participated in groups and comments, messaging, all of that type of thing.
Great. And you get maximum business from LinkedIn more than Facebook, Tracy?
hmm
Okay.
Yep. Let me actually
And
look because I might be able to.
sure.
Oh, I could do Facebook. I grew my connections by over 300% in a 2-year period. I grew my Facebook connections by over 300% in a 2-year period, and these are 3 things I did to do that. 1 was I got really vulnerable. 2, I took risks. And 3, I was consistent in my posting.
Awesome. Great. Great, Tracy. I think I think we're good. Is there anything else that you think that you have can help you with your marketing, or something that you've been thinking of putting out? Feel free to come up with ideas, and we can record those as well. But
Okay.
from my
Okay.
side, I think I'm good. But if you want
Okay.
to add anything to this, we can do that now.
Okay. What's the time frame like when the podcast would come out and
So the
things
audio
like that?
version will release in say about 10 days, and
Oh, that's quick.
this format that I'm doing now, right? I
Uh-huh.
just started it yesterday. So even though we've done 80 podcast
Mhm.
recordings, only after our distribution team came to the picture, we got a lot of perspective about creating these types of contents that I'm doing with you right now.
Okay.
Because yes, we can interpret and make a lot of carousels, but when the guest is very definitive about what they have to say, it makes it so much more effective for us to go out there and post that thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a virality factor that
Yep.
comes to a reel when it's a listicle thing, or when you say numbers and stuff like that.
Yep.
So that's what we're
Yep.
focusing. So
Yeah.
the reason I'm telling you all this is, in 10 days we'll be putting out audio,
Okay.
and we start promoting this by putting various posts on social media, and that'll happen say 2 weeks from now. We'll start doing that. two to
Okay.
three weeks Yeah.
Okay. And do you tag me or do I need to make
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
that
yeah.
I'm following? Okay.
We will tag you.
Okay.
Even if you put on our Instagram channel,
Uh-huh.
I will share you an email with everything, right?
Okay.
We can do,
Right.
in Instagram, you have an option to kind of, you post together, right? Edison OS and
Right.
Tracy posted together. So we can do all
Yes,
that.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me know if you need anything else or any questions or anything like that. Happy to help.
If you can just send, no, I think I have everything. I'm sorry. This is the usual
Okay.
thing because since I have your website,
Yeah.
usually we need pictures and, write ups, but we can pull
Uh-huh.
everything from your website and I can use
Yep.
ChatGPT to kind of modify and use from a third
Yep.
person point
I
of view.
love ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Great to
Yeah.
spur ideas and all that kind of stuff and help writing.
Yeah. Great. So
Awesome.
great, Stacey. Thank you so much for your time. This was
Yeah,
like,
thank you.
you've got such an amazing journey, such an inspiring journey.
I
And
appreciate
thank
that.
you so much for sharing all that with us. And I wish you all the
Thank
very
you.
best in your journey forward. And
Thank you.
yeah, we'll soon have a chat, hopefully, when you go full time as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And I can't wait for that.